Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Matt Henderson. I'll be your host for the webinar. We do have with us Tom Reed, who is the project manager for Shale Power with Catalyst Connection. So we're pleased today to learn more about well plugging opportunities across Appalachia, and we're very happy to have with us, I say, two of the experts in the area. No pressure, but we have Justin Wagner with us, a principal with CEC, and Jeff Walentowski with the president of Moody and Associates, and they're also both the chairs of the well plugging work group through the Marcellus Shale Coalition. So also a special thank you to Lauren Anderson with the MSC, who is on, for making the connection and putting you two to work. So we definitely appreciate you both being here today. We know this is a huge opportunity for companies, manufacturers across the footprint in the basin here, and there's a lot of questions, a lot of unknowns of what are these opportunities, what do these dollars mean, and how can somebody take advantage of those. So last to all of our attendees, the chat pod is open if you would like to introduce yourself, the company you're with, and of course enter any questions you have in there for the panelists. Justin and Jeff will cover as many as time permits. So with that, I guess Justin, I'm going to turn it over to you to start, and thanks for being here again, guys.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate the opportunity. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with just some introductions. And Jeff, can you start?
I can. And good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. And certainly thanks to Matt and Tom and Shale Power for giving us this opportunity to talk about a pretty big topic. But my introduction, as Matt mentioned, I'm president and CEO of Moody and Associates. We're a geologic, environmental, and engineering consulting firm located four locations throughout Pennsylvania. I'm a professional geologist. I have 34 years of experience. Have a significant amount of involvement with the oil and gas industry over the past 30 plus years of experience. And an item that we'll talk a little bit later in the presentation, back in 2019, I was appointed to the five-member Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Oil and Gas Technical Advisory Board, or TAB. And that gives me a lot of involvement in the well plugging workspace, and to try to gain some guidance and also some give some direction to maybe some questions that have been out there for quite some time for the oil and gas industry, specifically for well plugging. So, Justin, handing it off to you.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. So, I'm Justin Wagner. I'm a principal here at CEC in our headquarters in Moon Township. I've been working in oil and gas for probably, 10 or 15 years at least. And for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been very heavily involved in the orphan well programs in both Pennsylvania and Ohio. So got a lot of good experience to share with you from those projects. And before we jump into the history and some of the problems that we're seeing, just want to talk a little bit about the map that you're viewing currently. So this is a map of the United States, which is displaying the documented orphan well locations. And as you can see, there's hundreds of thousands of them. And right here in Pittsburgh, as you would expect, we are right in a huge concentration of them, and it's just a huge opportunity for our region, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, New York, and other states as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about those other states and the funding that's available through the federal government to not only the states, which is an opportunity, but also some of the private operators as well. So really, the history is that there's anywhere from 100,000 to 750,000 orphan wells, depending on where you're
A lot of
getting.
different sources out there, Justin. Yeah, yeah, and that's what I would share. I mean, and I'm butting into your part of the conversation, but it's. I mean, a lot of studies that have been done, and I think it just tells you people don't know on the amount of wells that are out there, and specifically here in Pennsylvania. So,
And that's, yeah, thanks, Jeff.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually, we're doing a lot of location with drones and magnetometers. And that's been our experience, is that when we're out there looking for wells, we think we're going to find so many, and we find twice as much. There's just a ton of wells that were undocumented and are currently being mapped. So just a lot of opportunity with that funding that's coming out. And the problem is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this case study here, what you're looking at here on the right. The problem is, hey, they're leaking. They're leaking oil. They're leaking methane. Certainly have my 4-gas meter alarm more than once. It's not uncommon to see that. So there's a lot of contamination. The wells are frequently located near streams. For example, the plan that you're seeing right here, this is Canton Township, Washington County, so right in our backyard. And you can see there's the active channel, there's the tank, the wellheads, just nearby the stream. And actually, when we plugged this one last year, the well actually kicked, and we had about 30 barrels go downstream. So it was definitely interesting, and cleaning up some of that, crude. So a lot of them are really difficult to find at the surface. So there's just a lot of opportunity across the board. So for the funding, the funding that I've mentioned, it is coming from the IIJA, which is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that's obviously federal funding. We're working our way through phase one, which is pretty much done. That money, $25 million to the participating states. And there was quite a few states that participated. That was released. It's been a couple years, maybe 2-3 years ago already now. We are just now moving into phase two, which is the largest amount of funding. The formula grants, $2 billion for the participating states nationwide. And Pennsylvania is, I believe, one of the top 5, maybe even second to only Texas in terms of funding, and expected to get about $400 million over the next 5 years. We are expecting an announcement for the first year, the first grant award, any day now. Within the coming weeks, we expect to hear from DEP or Department of Interior that $76 million has been awarded to Pennsylvania for plugging opportunities, and RFPs are likely to follow soon after that. So after 5 years, then phase two is done, move into phase three, which is performance grant. That could be another 4 years and potentially 1.5 billion. So you're looking at, in total, maybe this could be a 7 to 10 year program with a ton of money and a ton of opportunity. Anything to add to that, Jeff?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. And I think the only other thing that I'll add is just the timing of these grants. I mean, the each state has a time. There is a timing aspect where these monies have to be spent. So as Justin mentioned, I mean, the Department of Environmental Protection has been very diligent in trying to, with the initial grant over the past year or so, to get this money spent, and I expect the same type of progress with the formula grants as well. So,
good point. Yep. Okay, so grant funding as it relates to Pennsylvania specifically, Acts 96 and 136. This specifically provides funding to private operators for plugging. So it's a requirement of IJA that no less than 20% of the formula grant award is put into a kitty for grants for us here in Pennsylvania. So 15 million bucks. And then for every eligible well, 3,000 foot or less, you can get up to 40,000. I know that's not going to cover the well plugging entirely, but if it's half or even a third, it still helps. And then you can see down below that, 70,000 for wells that are over 3,000 feet deep. And then this is really good timing because there's some training coming out. I can maybe send out the link afterwards, or I can have Matt send out the link, or you can go to the DEP website and you can find this. But just FYI, there's several trainings, 2 in person next week, and then a virtual next Friday. So August 26th is in Slippery Rock, and then August 27th is in Titusville, and the virtual is next Friday. If you're interested in attending those trainings, they're going to talk about the grant funding opportunities for both of these acts. And then make sure you register early. There is a limit, even for the virtual. I think there's a limit of 300 people. I'm not sure why they put a limit on that if it's virtual, but if you're interested, make sure you sign up today or tomorrow. So some additional funding that's also out there that the state has already received is through another program called MERP, which stands for Methane Emissions Reduction Program. And really this is the point of MERP is plugging marginal conventional wells, but also quantifying the methane reduction. So the way it works is if you have if you exceed that threshold, which is right there within 10 feet of the well, then they want you to sample, measure how much methane is being emitted. And then once the well is plugged, post plugging, then go back and make sure you got it all so that they can quantify the actual reductions. So if I haven't mentioned it already, 45 million is the current grant cycle, and I believe that was, at least on paper, awarded in December. I don't know where it stands in terms of it being released. I plan to attend the webinar next week, and we'll ask that question. But some of the parameters for MERP and the marginal conventional wells, there's a definition of the marginal well right there, and the grant funding amounts 20,000 per eligible well, less than 3,000 feet, or 35,000 if it's greater than 3,000 feet. And really, bottom line here, guys, with all this funding is we are sitting right in the middle of the gas patch here. There's a ton of money. There's a ton of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved with this particular project. So I think the next slide, is there any questions for me right now, or maybe save questions till the end?
Yeah, Justin, I'll make one comment on that marginal conventional well. I mean, if you think about that definition, for those of you that are maybe in the industry and you read that, for those that aren't in the industry but want to maybe have a little better understanding, that marginal conventional well, that's probably 90% of those 90% or better of those wells that meet that definition. So just as an FYI, but also as Justin mentioned, I mean, there's with all the funding sources, I mean, there appears to be a long-term significant commitment for addressing the abandoned and orphan wells. And I personally think that there's just so many opportunities out there from the standpoint of expertise or equipment. I think that there's room for a lot of folks to be involved in the program. And I did see a question pop up in the chat. I don't know if we wanted to wait until afterwards or not. So
we can grab those at the end, guys.
Sounds good, Matt.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn this over to Jeff.
Okay, I've got 2 slides for everybody today, and like I said, I can probably talk for a lot longer than I'm going to. Probably could talk on regulatory and technical for probably an hour and a half easily. But I'm going to give everybody a 30,000 foot view, knowing that not everybody has some interest in the regulatory and the technical end, and maybe has more interest in how do I get involved? How could I potentially grab a piece of this for myself, my company, or just for doing the better good, as the DEP says, for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, but well plugging activities are regulated in Chapter 78, Subchapter D. Under the well plugging section, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios that are covered in the regulations. Covers details regarding the cement plugs, regarding plugging wells in coal areas, which primarily is southwestern Pennsylvania. Covers the plugging of wells in non-coal areas where surface casing is not cemented or present. We do come into those cases, especially with those aged wells that have been around, much like this one that you're seeing here from northwestern Pennsylvania. And then plugging wells in non-coal areas where surface casing is cemented. So, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios out there, but from a technical end, there's a lot more scenarios to be discussed, and I'll cover that in the technical section, the technical slide that I have coming up here. But to my point, there is a lot of regulatory language in place. But this is the engineering, the science behind plugging a well is far from exact. It's there are a lot of different scenarios that come in place, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide here. But the well plugging efforts really can greatly vary due to the depths. I mean, you go to northwest Pennsylvania where you have a lot of stripper wells. I mean, well depths aren't usually more than about 1,100 feet in a lot of areas in northwestern Pennsylvania. And you have some scenarios where you're talking 5,000 foot plus gas wells, say in southwestern Pennsylvania. So a lot of different scenarios that we could come across that you have to kind of shoehorn into some specific regulations. So, but given all that, there is regulation in place. Certainly some other regulations when we're talking regulatory, because I mean it doesn't just stop at well plugging. I mean we have to consider when we're going out to the site to plug a well that there are erosion and sedimentation control issues that need to be addressed. There may be some past spill issues. I mean, Justin mentioned a scenario that he came across from the standpoint of you have a release based on the former activities or possibly what happened as part of the plugging activities that you have to address through the Pennsylvania Land Recycling Program, or Act 2. Also, a lot of these areas, it's hard to get to these wells. So you have to build roads. You have to potentially address stream crossings or wetland crossings. A lot of different scenarios that also come into play just to plug a well. It's not as simple as backing up a cement truck to a well and just pouring cement down a hole. So next slide, Justin. So technical wise, I mentioned that I'm part of the 5-member oil and gas technical advisory board. As part of that board, my responsibilities, I was appointed to be the chair of a well plugging work group. That started very late, I believe, in December of last year, where we gathered a group of technical experts and current DEP oil and gas representatives to start discussing the major well plugging issues. That group has grown. Justin and myself are part of that. Lauren Anderson, as Matt referenced from the MSC, he is part of that. But there's a lot of very, very good people from the regulatory standpoint, but also from the industry standpoint that sit on that as part of that work group. I believe it's about 45 people all together that are part of that work group. But we have been discussing over the past 9 months a lot of significant well plugging issues. One item from the standpoint of DEP is to ensure that everybody's on the same page. We agree that training of all people, including DEP personnel, is a significant item of concern and from the standpoint of consistency. But also giving everybody some thoughts and language to ensure that any consistency issues are addressed, and that's a big item that we're working on. We want to address the consistency issue as part of a well plugging operation, knowing that there's a variety of things that can happen, a variety of scenarios, but yet we want to maintain the two biggest purposes of plugging a well. Certainly the environmental protection, the protection of fresh groundwater, and the prevention of the vertical flow of natural gas and hydrocarbons. I mean, that the bottom line. That is where you stand and what the biggest purpose of you plugging one of these wells. But the working group, the main topic has been probably for experts that have joined us on the call today, finding attainable bottom has just been a discussion that I've had with many people, DEP personnel, but also industry experts for many years. We're actually having open discussions on concepts from the standpoint of finding attainable bottom, which trying to find trying to get down to the depth to ensure you have a good cement plug. And if you cannot do that, to illustrate what a reasonable effort is, and yet still having a good cement job and a good well plugging effort, if you cannot find the attainable bottom, because like many of these wells are in poor condition. Many wells have been drilled more than 100 years ago, and many cases where attainable bottom can be a challenge to find. So the work group that we are involved in and continue to meet. We have met actually this past week. Just continue to review other issues like I talked about earlier: the erosion and sedimentation controls, spill impacts, potential water supply issues, and then future emissions monitoring, much like what Justin was talking about. That's a big part of that MERC program. So my hope is the final results of our work group efforts is likely some addition and changes to the regulation to try to promote consistency, no matter if you're a department official, an industry official, or a consultant. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and I think that some addition of some new regulations or tweaking of some language and the addition of technical guides that makes sense to assist with a lot of the consistency issues. That's what that work group is trying to achieve.